Okay, hello and welcome to another video on our climb towards 2000 ELO. And our opponent plays d4, so we know that I like to play f5, the Dutch, against this, so why not? This is a little bit unusual. I rarely see this. I'm just going to develop knight f6. We're just going to play things the ordinary way to begin with. Again, this looks pretty unusual. I see no reason not to just play d5 now. This is a little bit of a Stonewall Dutch setup where we just clamp on these light squares, build this this light squared pawn structure, and hold on to e4 like our life depends on it, which it usually does. One idea white can have to undermine this is to play c4 and try and trade this pawn off. But if we see c4, we will play c6, so after takes, we replace this pawn. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to build up on the light squares. Probably not rush to develop my knight because of what we talked about. c6 is nice to have in the back pocket, so I will develop my bishop to e7 might be quite nice because I might want to come to f6 and have this diagonal, because as well as my opponent playing c4, I can play c5 and chip away at my opponent's center like this. Playing c5, looking to trade this off. Of course, when I play c5, I give up c6, so c4 could come, but I'm not too worried about that. We would have the initiative if we played this move first. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do this now, I think. I'm going to play c5, look to break away at my opponent's center and get my knight in behind. So let's develop the knight. If ever my opponent takes, we're capturing back like this. Notice that in this kind of setup, we have this lovely hole that we can exploit on e4, but our opponent also has the same hole on e5. Alright, our opponent's proposing a trade here. What happens if we trade pieces? Well, I get my c6 pawn back, and that kind of holds onto my structure a little bit, and it gives me a second c5 break, which could be quite nice. Also, if I play here and my opponent recaptures like this, then this wins a tempo and helps me to get my light squared bishop on a not so useful diagonal, because as long as my pawn is stationed on d5, things are a little bit shut off there. But of course, what my opponent has missed is that this is simply defended twice, and so they drop a piece. This. Those are all useful considerations to make. But if you can win a free piece, you absolutely should be doing so. Okay, so my opponent adds another attacker here, thinking, all right, well, now I can take the knight, right? So I capture back like this. Or maybe once I retreat the knight, maybe I'm going to get the bishop back. But of course, once the knight is retreated, I would have another attacker on this square. It doesn't work. So I'm just going to retreat the knight, and we're going to get away with our free piece. And all will be good. It is... They did it. They did it. We take the piece, and now you have lost another piece. Counting attackers and defenders is really important. So the mistake begins here. The mistake begins here, right? You're attacking my knight, and you're thinking, okay, well, if you capture, it's defended, but it's defended twice. So I win the knight, +3, you capture back with the bishop, and then I would capture the bishop. So of course I retreat the knight. Then they bring the bishop in, but because the knight has retreated, doesn't matter that it's defended by the queen, I now have two attackers. I take the bishop in the same way. And this is really funny, because now I can retreat the knight in exactly the same way. However, if I retreat the knight, I lose a pawn, because knight retreats, pawn captures, and if I were to capture back with my bishop, my opponent would win the piece here. So I'm thinking maybe just b3. That way, if they capture here, I can capture back with my bishop, and the knight is defended. However, what we'd have to expect after that is... sorry, I said b3, I meant b6. b6, let's say they take, and I recapture like this. Well, now b4 is coming, attacking the bishop and the knight. So that doesn't really work. So I think it's just better to... I think it's better just to retreat the knight, or we can look for some other alternative. The queen here is stationed rather awkwardly. Is there a way I can win a tempo on this queen? Absolutely. Knight d5. Now you can't capture here because this is a priority, something you have to contend with immediately, and you just give up the queen. Do I take with the knight or do I take with the bishop? Well, it's a question of move order, really. It doesn't really matter. It's just what piece do we eventually want situated here. I kind of like keeping the knight because then the knight can return to d5, but it's probably better to keep the bishop because they tend to be stronger pieces. But our opponent's just lost a queen in this way, and fine, we might still run into this fork, but we've won a queen, so we should be perfectly happy about that. I'm just going to play bishop d7, try and initiate more trades. As always, we are up a piece, so the more trades we can initiate, or the more pieces our opponent just gives us for free, the better. And once the dust clears, it's going to be a simple case of checkmating our opponent. Yes, they have secured this nice fork on the rook and the queen, but the reason this doesn't work is because our knight is here to recapture. Okay, and we'll just capture back like this, and this is probably going to end up in, well, okay, checkmate in one move, unless they create Luft. And this would be the incorrect way to create Luft. This would be the correct way, because if you played here, then bishop h3 would be mate, but not to worry, this is mate. e4, e5 means knight c3, the Vienna opening. Our opponent is rated 577. This already is not such a great move. I could just snatch this off and you're going to have doubled pawns, but I don't think I need to do that. I don't need to capture here and, you know, give my opponent an open b file. Let's just leave this knight on a silly square. And I'm thinking maybe I could, you know, break in the center because now there's no knight to chase me away from c6. That looks quite nice. Break here, here, here. What's going to chase me away? Your queen, maybe? But then I play here and I kick your queen. And then we win a tempo to get our knight out. Yeah, the knight wants to be here on c6 so it can prevent me getting my queen to d4. Alright, so this is a little bit boring, but I'm just going to show you that how early on in the game your opponent can make numerous positional concessions that end up to their disadvantage. We're trading queens here and now they've lost castling rights. So now I'm going to come here and attack this pawn. My opponent's likely going to defend it like this. They're not. Okay. I'm going to develop my bishop, because if captures, captures, and now we have a lot of pressure on this pawn here. And if not, I see what my opponent wants. They want to remove the knight and then go for this pawn. But the problem is if I castle, they don't have time to do it. Because after captures, this would be a discovered check. And then I would have time to defend this pawn with something like bishop to d3. So you don't actually, I mean, yes, you remove the defender, but this check means that I can replace the defender. And actually, I'm kind of thinking we go here. And if my opponent captures, we win a piece. And if you play c6, well, then we come back and we defend and everything's fine. Yeah, this bishop can't take because it is pinned to the king. I can't take this now because the knight defends the bishop. But were my opponent to remove the knight from the defense of the bishop because they get greedy, eyeing up the pawn, well, then I would win a piece. Okay, fine. So now I'm going to drop back and protect the pawn. And I'm looking to take my opponent's pawn now, and notice that they can't play f6 in order to hold on to this, because their knight sits on f6. So the f6 pawn pushes is not available, which means I'm simply winning this pawn. Okay, you can defend it like this. You can defend it like this, and I see your idea. I see your idea. Does it matter? That's my question. Does it matter? I come here, and if you capture back, I'm capturing back like this. And if I go here and you come here, forking my rooks, well, I come here and I fork your king and your rook. And so I win a rook, and you might win a rook. But I win 2 pawns in that exchange. 1 pawn, 2 pawn, rook, and I probably lose the knight. 1 pawn, rook, and you probably lose the knight. So I do win a pawn in that exchange. That is a little complicated. And I wouldn't expect people at this ELO range to be able to calculate all of that. But maybe that's what we go for. We simply win a pawn. And of course, if they capture back this way, we're going like this. And you notice maybe even more dangerous to take like this. And after captures, I would win this knight for free. Because this would be a discovered check on the king. That looks pretty nasty as well. So my opponent would take here, they would win a rook, but I would take here. Okay, fine, so they capture this way. But this is defended, so now I simply win a piece. And I'm also threatening the g7 pawn, so it's likely, yeah, my opponent will play f6, fine. Which diagonal is going to be more beneficial to me now? Well, this looks a little bit cut off, right? So maybe I want to come here, but then there's the potential for this pawn storm. And I do like the idea of having this bishop kind of close to my king. If ever I need to tuck this bishop in and play king b1, my king will be nice and safe over here. Is my opponent threatening anything? Yes, they're threatening taking my bishop. Do I worry so much about that? I don't think so. I don't think so, because if you take my bishop, you help me improve my position slightly, because I can bring my rook up to d3. So what I will do is reinforce my e-pawn, because if I lose my bishop, then the e-pawn would be hanging. Now it's not hanging, because I've played this. And this is now not an attack, because I've defended this. I don't think my opponent took the time to think through why I played this move. And their rook doesn't really want to be here, and now if they're not careful, they will be losing this piece. So they need to play a move like this. I can win a tempo, my opponent's rook, but then they're just going to move the rook here. Maybe that's useful. Maybe that's useful. I don't know. I mean, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. Let's play here. It's just really annoying for my opponent that this king is essentially wedded to the protection of this bishop for the time being. My opponent needs to find rook f7. Because if this rook were to come off the protection of this bishop, I'd be winning the piece. Okay, so my opponent blunders. They don't play rook f7, so we're just winning this piece for free now. And with it, we'll be winning the game. I'll be taking this pawn. Okay, yeah. Now we just simply want to bring the other rook up, like this, so that they protect one another. And we will, I mean, yeah, well... I don't even want the rook. What I want is checkmate. This file's cut off. If I can play rook g8, I mean, trading the rooks here would have been fine. I would have had a rook and a bishop, and been up several pawns, and that might have been an easy way to simplify, but I feel like my opponent might just simply fall for this. They can't move the king over, actually, because the bishop protects. So going here now would be a mistake. But I can play here, and if my opponent makes the mistake of grabbing this pawn, they lose the game. Maybe they're thinking, aha, I'm going to try and infiltrate your back rank, but, you know, d2 is defended. You can take the pawn if you want. I'll just deliver mate here. And now they can't play this because there's no pawn protecting the rook, so I would simply take the rook. Okay, so this is a nice idea. This is a nice idea. Only now they're... this doesn't actually work. This, and that's mate. King over, only move, rook here. Yeah, lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you play against e4 in the comments below. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.